Welcome to the LSBU 100 Engineering, a World That Works for Everyone event within the LSBU 100 Women in Engineering event series. For now, I'd like to hand you over to Sanchia, Alasia.
Hello, and a very good evening and a warm welcome to you all. So glad to see you here at our London South Bank University Women in Engineering event. We want engineering to be a world that works for everyone. And today we'll be examining how the products and environments around us can be designed for inclusivity ahead of International Persons with Disability Day tomorrow. So what is International Persons with Disability Day? Well, this is an international day. It is tomorrow, Thursday, the 3rd of December. And it really is nothing about us without us. So it really is, we don't want engineering and products and street scenes to be designed without the people that they are serving involved at the table and creating the process. Now, this year, the annual celebration of people with disabilities theme is Not All Disabilities Are Visible. So they are focusing on spreading awareness and understanding of disabilities that may not be apparent. So things such as mental illness, chronic pain, fatigue, sight, hearing impairments, diabetes, brain injuries, learning differences, among others. And I can really resonate with this theme because there's two things that you can see. One, you can see that I'm a woman, and two, you can see that I'm a Black woman. But what you can't see is that I suffer from a chronic pain condition called endometriosis. And for that, I need flexibility in my working patterns. And I'm really grateful that LSBU accommodates that. But it's really important that we recognise that people with disabilities, whether hidden or whether visible, need our support, need our kindness, compassion and care. Also, I just wanted to highlight that in the UK, from the 18th of November until the 18th of December, we have our annual UK History Disability History Month. And the theme this year is how far have we come and how far have we got to go? And obviously we have come a long way. We've had the Disability Discrimination Act, which is now part of the Equality Act. But we've seen that the pandemic has highlighted the inequalities that we face, because we've seen that disabled people during this pandemic have had their independence and so many other things stripped away. We see that the news conferences do not have, interpreters or sign language, even though it's been highlighted so many times. So yes, we've achieved a lot, but there's still a long way to go. So now back to the event. So this is part 4 of the LSBU 100 Women in Engineering event series, which has explored a range of themes. And I know that some of you would have attended some of the other themes. So we have a full programme and we have a number of wonderful speakers. We have Kristen Tappin, we have Jonathan Thompson, Jennifer Afram, and Allyna Ullah. And what I'll do is when they all come to speak, I will sort of introduce them and give a little background into them individually. So what I will do now is head over to our first speaker. Our first speaker, and I'll ask Kristen to turn on her mic and camera, is Kristen Tappin. She will talk about, hello Kristen. She will talk about the reasons and methods for inclusive design. She's a former student and she's an alumni of London South Bank University. She's a project design engineer and she's an award-winning, I should say, project design engineer who has a wealth of experience in the automotive sector. She's created many designs, 3D modelling, material research and development. And she's also experienced in inclusive design, which is what we're particularly focusing on tonight. So Kristen, we welcome you to talk to us for about 20 minutes about why we should engage in inclusive design. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sanchia. You shouldn't have built me up so much.
No, you've achieved amazing things and we need to highlight and celebrate that, so do not shy away.
Okay. So thank you, Sanchia. My name is Kristen and I'm a product design engineer. So what that is I make physical products. It can be a water bottle, it can be a phone, it can be a wheelchair. I just make physical products. Some people also go into UX area, but that's not really my forte. So first I want to go into what is inclusive design. I think we all have different views, and I was a bit confused like most people. So I want you to write in the chat box, I'll give you about 30 seconds, what you think inclusive design is in just a few words, and let's see what everyone writes. Not sure if we're getting answers, or maybe I can't see. Let's see.
Yes, there's things coming through on the chat now. We've got accessible for everyone. I've put thinking about the needs of our diverse communities. Design that caters for all people.
Hi, Deborah. Okay, so let's go back and go on with the presentation. So I asked this question. Hold on. All right, perfect. I asked this question because I was confused myself. At university, we're taught that inclusive design is design for disability. So there's a specific disability. You find out everything about that person, that type of person, and their needs, their wants, and you make a product specifically for them for that scenario. For example, here, right? But as I'm learning more through Sanchia, through other designers, I've realized inclusive design tends to gear more towards designing with disabilities. So what that means is you might start off designing for a person with disability, but then you open it up to the mass market. And the reason why I said start off with the disability first is because it's much easier to start with a challenge or a problem and then broaden it out than starting with a broad product and then adapting it to a disability, if you see what I mean. So this is one of the best examples that I saw. It's OXO. I'm sure you've seen, probably have one at home. It's a brand of peelers and home accessories. The man designed this for his wife who had arthritis and couldn't believe that peelers and home accessories for kitchen were so non-ergonomic, hard to handle. So yes, he made a peeler for his wife or for the people with arthritis, but he also made the most ergonomic peeler that exists and has a very successful company for everybody. So let's look at why. Why should we design with inclusivity in mind? So first of all, I think this is probably the most that you can think of. Do good, feel good. You want to make people feel good out there. People have needs. You want to meet them. You want to innovate for a good reason. I think that's great. One other reason is sustainability or smart business model. I apologize for the poor resolution of this picture. I couldn't find better. So here we have a chair that adapts to every age, possibly different disabilities as well. And sustainability wise, you don't have to get rid of the chair ever. And it's just a smart design because I think someone's going to pick this chair over another one because it's going to last them a long time. I think the most interesting is increased revenue. So yes, do good, feel good is important, but when you go into the real market, into companies, to investors, when you try to commercialize your product, you need to have a bit more realistic outlook that not that many people care as much as you do. So you need to build a strong business plan. Why is this going to make investors money, right? And here's a smart product. It's an innovator made a chair that goes inside of wheelchairs and helps children sit up who have poor core, sit up and not fall over using smart air cells. So they inflate and hold the person up. So you might think that's quite a niche market. This person's not going to sell that much, but she's pretty smart. Can you think of what other markets this technology, patented technology, could be applied to? Give you a couple of seconds. Yeah. So she's thinking the car interior market, right? It's much more comfortable and can hold you up better. Also office chairs, which a lot of us suffer from scoliosis or poor posture, right? So designing for disability doesn't have to just be for good, it can also make a lot of money. So let's look a bit about how. As a design engineer, my training focuses a lot on, before I come up with a solution, I have to understand what the user's needs are and spend a long time there before I really bring in any kind of solution to the market. So the first step is conduct primary research. And I think a lot of people shy away from this because they're afraid to go to the end user. They're a bit embarrassed. They don't want to bother that person. And so they just look on the internet and try to find statistics, but nothing beats talking to the end user themselves. They, from experience, what I found is they just want to tell you everything. They want to help you. So you really need to ask what their lifestyle is like, what they think of your product or your idea, even though that can be a bit harsh sometimes, what they need. And one really interesting thing is how much they would pay for your potential product. And in design, we learn about a multiple of 3 rule. So let's say that the user will only pay maximum £90 for your product. Well, it shouldn't cost you more than £30 to make. Otherwise, you'll either make no profit or go into debt or make less profit, negative profit. Okay. Body storming. So as you can see on the right, people did not put themselves in the situation of the end user and made an impossible handicap ramp. Now, body storming is where you put yourself in the shoes of the user. So if it's for person in a wheelchair, you literally put yourself in a wheelchair, go grab some coffee, see how it is to get in and out of the university or your workplace. And that way you really get insights as to what it would be like. Prototyping. So a lot of people get scared of prototyping. They think they have to spend thousands on it when they really, really don't. Here, this has nothing to do with inclusivity. I'm sorry, it's for a separate project, but it was a good example of during lockdown, I used my home fan. I kind of tore it apart, an incense and a bunch of cardboard from Amazon Prime deliveries. And I made prototypes to not only see if my prototype worked, but also just to get an idea of the look and feel, the dimensions of what it should end up like. Too many times people jump to prototyping, expensive prototyping, and then they're stuck with an idea that they've invested their money or their family's money, and they don't want to back out of it because they're so invested. So before you get to that step, just do down and dirty prototypes, go back and bring it to the primary research user that you first surveyed, and make sure that it's something that they would want. So factor in maintenance. This is something that I think we overlook. This means how will the user fix their product once it's out of your hands and into theirs. I have a friend in New York. He lives in a skyscraper. He's in a wheelchair and he has a spinal cord injury, which makes him not able to walk, obviously, but also doesn't really have proper use of his hands. And he told me his pet peeve is that he cannot fix his wheelchair himself. So I want you to imagine his scenario. He's alone in his apartment. His wheelchair doesn't work, right? He somehow has to get to a store a kilometer away, a store to fix his wheelchair. Then once he somehow gets there, hopefully it's open, but maybe not during a pandemic or a weekend. Once he gets there, he has to give up his chair. Maybe they have a replacement, maybe they don't. And then he has to make his way all the way back. He told me that he would rather a wheelchair that he can adjust and fix himself. Or if you can't do that, then possibly have a service that can come to the user's home. So factor in emotion. This is really important. I see a lot of products, and I'm sure you've seen as well, products for people with disabilities. that are really, really ugly. They're just a bunch of pipes stuck together. It's functional, it works, but at what cost? You look like you're in a contraption and everyone's afraid to come talk to you. So another user told me that she actually uses this specific wheelchair called Carbon Black when she goes out to a nice restaurant and she has her nice shoes on. So I think we forget sometimes that people with disabilities also want stylish products that reflect their personality. Along with emotion or along with style, think of customization. So this specific wheelchair, you can pick the color of the wheels, which doesn't seem like much, but think of the way that you pick products, your phone, your laptop, whatever. You like a bit of customization, and it represents who you are. And this is a trend that I've seen going lately. So instead of trying to hide a disability, why don't you show it off? Make it almost superhuman-like. Make it cooler than the non-existent version. So now I'm going to show you my examples. Keep in mind that these are university projects. None have come to life. They're just concepts. And I've been learning about inclusivity. I'm not the best designer out there, and I don't know everything. So this was just a few projects that might interest you. So first is Dolce. It's a milk bottle. The idea behind Dolce is that it could work for people who have little hands like children, or people, elderly people who aren't able to grip because of, say, arthritis or other disabilities. So the idea is that they can grip, but they can also slide their hand through the center cavity that you see and dip it this way. Yeah. So while it's hard, very impossible to manufacture, the idea, inclusivity was there. The concept car, this design itself is not for inclusivity, but I just put it there because it was my first concept car. While I worked in the automotive industry and we created concepts, we had to think about all the factors that you see on the left to meet everyone's requirements. Man, woman, tall, short, kid, in a wheelchair, blind, deaf, elderly, I mean, every possible disability that you can think of. And it's really, really hard. So some of them are door height, seat height, backrest height, the color of the lights, the vibration, the feedback when you push a button in your car. So keep that in mind when you get in your car next. So this is a USB stick. It was an accidental inclusive design. It's inclusive because there's little grips, a bit like OXO. There's little grips on the side to help you pull it out if you have poor strength in your index and your thumb. But also when you go to grip the USB stick, you can also hook it with your index finger. So this is a nice example because it just shows various ways that you could use it. So Moveo, I won an award with Bolt Burden Kemp for this design. It is a bit wow. So in real life, I don't know if it would look so nice, but the idea was that actually, let me go back to this page. Using the spur gear, sorry, how can I explain this? So imagine in a wheelchair, when you push the wheel, your hand, or I'm sorry, when you push the rim, your hand actually touches the wheel. And I actually tried this myself. I couldn't believe that it was so, but it's true. I couldn't push the rim without pushing or touching the wheel. Now, can you imagine what the wheel runs into every day? Dog poo, people spitting, and every possible disgusting thing. And users have to actually have contact every single push. That's madness. So my idea was to separate the rim from the wheel. And this I did using a spur gear. And this is what you would find on your bike. Same mechanism. And it just makes one moves the other pretty much. So it's a lot easier to grip now. And the other benefit is that it's actually easier to push because the force is translated through that spur gear. The nice part of this competition is that the judges were people with spinal cord disabilities, and we all went to dinner and they told me what they liked, what they didn't like about products, about my design, about what their life is like, pretty much. Unum, I think this fits this year's, what Sanchia was talking about, this year's theme quite well. A lot of disabilities are invisible. And this was a project for Deborah Andrews, actually. It was meant for people with dementia. And people with dementia tend to forget that they need to go to the bathroom and they soil their clothes. So here we looked at the emotional aspect of this and thought, wow, I would be really embarrassed. I'm probably have a carer or a son or a daughter taking care of me and doing my laundry. So imagine the process. You soil your clothes, you put it in the laundry, or sorry, in the little hamper on the side of your room. It smells. The person who's taking care of you comes to get it, has to get their hands dirty. Everyone's just not, it's not optimal, right? So this design was meant to have the user put their soiled clothes inside the pod directly, close it so that it's airtight and none of the liquids or the smell is coming out. And the excuse me, the care actually puts it directly in the wash, simply opens up the inner cavities, and that way your clothes, the carer doesn't have to have contact with the soiled clothes. And along with the product, we made an advertising campaign. And this goes back to, instead of hiding a disability, make it bold, make it fun, make it the opposite of shameful. So here we looked at who else has this problem? Babies, right? So we equated people with dementia with babies to have the same issue. And some people might get offended. I think make it bold is the way to go. So in conclusion, let's say, again, make it bold. Don't be afraid to go to the end user, ask them for their feedback, ask them for their needs, and think of inclusivity as a start for products for disabilities, but then think of how you can expand it to the greater market for your own revenue and so that more people can experience your product. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kristen. It was really interesting to see all the different products that have that can be made, and I think it's really important what people put in the chat about inclusive design being about finding out about people's needs and making products for their needs, but also you showing us that inclusive products can serve everyone, and it is about, you know, inclusion for one group can actually have many benefits for many other groups. So if we think about how we make our products adaptable and sustainable, it will be much better for everyone. There is the disabled pound. So disabled people are customers too. And, you know, they want stylish products that are easy to maintain. One thing that really irks me sometimes is you'll see disabled toilets that don't have mirrors and toilets that are not disabled that do, as if disabled people don't want to check their hair or check their makeup or anything. Actually, they have the same needs, and it is society sometimes that disables them and not the other way around. So thank you so much for sharing. We've got some questions coming through, and just to remind everyone, if you do have a question, if you would like to pop it in the Q&A box, and we will pick that up after all the speakers have spoken. So our next two speakers will be from the Disability Service right here at LSBU. I'll ask Jonathan Thompson and Jennifer Afram to switch on their cameras and mics. Jonathan is the Disability Manager here, and Jennifer is the Disability Advisor. Jonathan has been the Disability and Dyslexia Manager here for 4 years. And he's also the Vice Chair for the National Association of Disability Practitioners and leads on professional development for members in the tertiary education sector. Jonathan studied at Camberwell College of Arts and initially taught art and design in adult education. Jennifer has worked with us for 7 years, and she is the link advisor to 3 schools, which includes the School of Engineering, which is hosting this event today. She's also recently become an accredited member of the National Association of Disability Practitioners as well. She's also got experience of working at East London in Hackney at their career service, managing special educational needs work within schools, and working with young people with special educational needs. So they are going to talk to us about the disability service here. So we look forward to hearing from you and more about the service.
Okay. Thank you, Sanchia. I'll just share my screen, my slides. Okay. Excuse me. Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Kristen. That was fascinating, and I really enjoyed your discussion there, and just showing the way that it's sometimes the environment that creates disability in that sense, and what can mitigate it is the design of something. So it's very much so. Coming to our service, we don't design products, but we are working towards what I'd like to think a more ergonomic design service for our students. So we're calling it very much the disability service, and we're working towards inclusivity by design. And we'll go into a little bit more of what that means. So this is the team. We have 4 disability advisors based in the Student Life Centre. However, we're all working remotely at the moment, hence a little infographics there. And it's working well. In that sense, we've removed the barrier to some extent of having to access the campus or having to make an appointment through a booking system through the Life Centre. It can be easily done through email and Microsoft Teams. We're functioning in some ways more efficiently than we did before. So that's interesting. But this is our team: Jennifer Afram, John Moyer, Jennifer Richardson, and Josh Ward. And we're really advising a whole range of students that will share information about their disability, as obviously invisible or visible, long-term or short, as well as advising our colleagues as well, particularly academic colleagues. And we'll come on to that, just how we're advising about inclusive design and teaching and learning. How ergonomic can we be about that? Because that mitigates the disability sometimes, as well as the additional support from there on. So currently, this is what we do, and as I said, we're a student-facing service to remove barriers to learning. And I can't quite see my side. Ooh, I shall move back. And to support students in the whole student journey and learning experience. At the moment, we have one foot in what we call the medical model and 1 foot in the social model. So the idea that the medical model, as Kristen alluded to, that students are defined by their disability, their medical evidence supports that, and then we make the adjustment, then we do the adaptation. Kristen was talking about as design, but previously it's been very specific for the disabled community. But we actually learned that actually, if you get the design right in the first place, it's good for all. And everybody can benefit from this. And that's what we call the social model. And really, that's, as a service, that's really where we're heading. Takes time, and it's about culture change, which we have to work with our colleagues and work with the history of our organisation to move it to that place. So we have a two-pronged approach towards an inclusive environment. And our vision is a service that works closely with the core business of curriculum design and delivery. And obviously the learning environment within that. So on that point, I shall hand you over to Jennifer Afram, one of our disability advisors will sort of explain really about currently how we work and a little bit more detail, and then I'll jump back in a little bit later about really what we're doing in terms of a strategy for inclusive practice. And I shall move on to the next slide.
Okay, so this slide talk about what we do for students and how we work with students. So obviously we before COVID would be meeting with students, but now obviously we're contacting students in a different way, looking at the needs of our current students and prospective students. And we do a bit of work with students before they actually become ours, to look at what reasonable adjustments we can make. And we draft what is called a support arrangements form. But also part of that may be to have discussions with different schools, different academic members of staff to look at course content, the design, maybe assessments, and to really agree what reasonable adjustments need to be in place for the student. So we agree those arrangements with the student, and once we've got consent, we can share, or we have to share those arrangements with the academic team, so that lecturers are aware of what has been agreed and actually what we need to put in place and make sure that is in place for the student. We screen for specific learning differences. So if a student feels that they may have a specific learning difference, so maybe difficulties with reading or paying attention, or struggling with short-term memory, we invite students to do an online screening assessment first. And so we're using a new screening assessment. It's quite good. It provides the student with some feedback about their learning style and some advice about what to do next. So that's been pretty useful for us, and it gives some kind of indication as to what specific learning difference that the student may be struggling with. So that gives us some information, and we can refer the student on for further support if that's required. So the main specific learning differences really, and the majority of students who are registered with us will have maybe dyslexia, dyspraxia. Those are the two main ones, but certainly we do have many more students that have ADHD, for example, ADD in adults, and for some students who have, say, for example, have autism, we don't screen for that, but actually it does fall under the umbrella of a specific learning difference. So there's arrangements there that we can put in place. We work with other support services here within the university, and so we will signpost. We've got the other half, so we're one half of the wellbeing team at London South Bank University. So we've got our mental health and wellbeing team as well. So we work quite closely with them. So we may refer a student to see a mental health and wellbeing advisor just to kind of look into what wider support is available. But also we may work with our colleagues, for example, or refer students to our colleagues in Skills for Learning, for example, if a student needs some particular support around learning, so maths, academic skills, writing skills, that sort of thing. We offer some support on disabled students allowance. So some of you will be familiar with disabled students allowance, this DSA for short. And so we can guide and support a student through that application process, and that funding is then used to pay for support, and that support can really complement the arrangements that we put in place here and the support here that we have in the university. So it takes a bit of time but to get in place, but we do try and encourage where a student is actually eligible to apply for DSA, we try to get that in place as soon as possible. And then throughout the student's time and journey in the course, we provide ongoing assistance, training to academic staff. We have a session, we have a couple of sessions running next week on exam support and arrangements. So we try to work as much as possible with our students by the way of follow-up and sessions, and as well we try to make sure that we're providing guidance support to our members of staff who are supporting our students. So yes, support arrangements. So it's a physical form that we agree with a student, and so the reasonable adjustments that can be included. It talks about things like extra time and what specific extra time is required. If, say, for example, a student needs particular equipment or software to be used in exams, the support arrangements form will detail that. Any key information for members of staff working with the student about the condition, medical condition, specific learning difference. Sometimes it is helpful to put the arrangements into some kind of context. So if there is a bit of information about the student's disability or basically their needs, then it helps the academics to understand maybe why we've recommended particular equipment or particular level, a particular amount of time. Talks about practical support. So some of our students will have access to one-to-one support with their study. So we have quite a few students who have note-taking support, for example, but we've also got students that require more specialist support, like specialist note-taking or BSL or communication support. And so that information needs to be detailed on the arrangements, because academics need to know. And of course, there's other implications. So like whether that member of staff will need access to Moodle, for example, or the students' resources. And we're going to talk about the DSA, but some students have access to specialist study skills and mentoring. And so if a student has access to that support, maybe the academic will want to know that they have support outside of the typical support arrangements within the course. So yes, we talked a little bit about the social model of disability, and really that's what we're hoping and we're trying as much as possible to move towards. But what I like about this diagram is the traditional way of looking at things, or the medical model of disability, kind of puts the student in our case at the heart of the issue, or it's the student that is the problem. It's the student that has that difficulty with accessing the course or accessing the campus. And so it's actually the student's responsibility to kind of get on with it and get on with the course and work harder or work smarter or whatever. And obviously we know that that's not the way that things should work, because the social model of disability looks at what are the barriers, what are the external environmental barriers. It could be the barriers on the course or the learning, to the assessments that have an impact on the student. So rather than putting the student at the center or at the core, we need to look at what are the barriers that are actually affecting that student's ability to engage or to achieve or progress or to access. And just like with life, there's always a grey area in the middle. So the bit in the middle is because, yes, we want to move more towards a social model of disability, but there are particular, I say, barriers for our team, in that we have to lean towards the medical model or to the traditional ways of looking at things, because we are students for medical evidence, for example. And there's nothing within the law, and within the Equality Act, which what underpins our work, that requires a student to have medical evidence to access, support. But in order to be able to put support in place and to differentiate some students who, from those students who have specific needs and need particular adjustments, we need to know what that student's medical condition, specific learning difference, mental health condition is. And so we do ask for some evidence. Yeah. But hopefully with the social model, and Jonathan mentioned this at the beginning, like you engineers would love this slide, because we want to inclusive practice, and being inclusive by design, we want to be able to get to a stage where, yes, there will be some occasions where we have to put or make some specific adjustments for particular students. But generally, all our students should be able to access their course without actually seeing that, you know, things have been done, or there's some special arrangement, or that they're a student with special educational needs, for example. So the way that we access services, systems, shops, whatever, in everyday life, it's done with, you know, with ergonomics in mind. So we also want the courses that we offer to be that way. So we use this slide quite a bit. So the picture there where there's the drop down curve, for example, it's got the nodules which are raised, and it's done in such a way so that maybe for an individual with a visual difficulty will know that they are reaching the road. But actually, if we're thinking about inclusivity and being inclusive by design, there are many other people who will be able to, who may find it difficult to access the curb or to cross the road because of the step. So it's the step that's the barrier. So think about if you are, you know, in a wheelchair, for example, or you're pushing your luggage. We're not going anywhere at the moment in terms of holiday, but if you are, so that drop curve is inclusive by design, so that everybody, all students, anybody who has some kind of difficulty will be able to access it without kind of standing out. So that's kind of how we want to move towards. And I like this slide.
I think we'll have to move on a bit.
Oh yeah,
keep
okay.
Going.
All right, sorry. So reasonable adjustments. These are the reasons why it's a good idea to have to be inclusive by approach as well as design. So obviously on my right hand side, we've got retention. We want to make sure that you know, students stay on the course and they're happy and they achieve. Reputation. So for example, if we're known to be a university that doesn't provide adequate support, the word kind of gets around. Risk mitigation. Obviously, we want to try and avoid any legal challenges against the university about the support that we provide. If, say, for example, there's support that we need to put in place, which may initially take a lot of time and may incur some costs, but it means for the long run, we have those adjustments in place, and definitely assurance and accountability. So we look to work with like our members in, say, for example, CRIT or the other teams within the university to make sure that we're providing good courses with reasonable adjustments. So we'll go to the next slide.
Okay. Thanks, Jennifer. I think we are running out of time now, but I'll just briefly end to say that as a university, well, all universities have been asked by the Office for Students to put together a 5-year access and participation plan. So we are working with key colleagues to do that, and in particular, thinking about promoting universal design for learning, which is basically, in a nutshell, flexible ways of learning, flexible study resources, and flexible ways of testing learning. If we get that right, again, what Kristen was saying, in our design of the curriculum and the way we engage with our students, it will mitigate many barriers. And if you ever want to contact us, these are contact details, and I'm sure Dean and the organisers can share this with you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Jonathan and Jennifer, for sharing about what you and the team are doing, which is really working down to break down those barriers to learning quickly and efficiently. And I like what you're saying about accessible by design for, again, it goes back to that point. If we make things accessible, it will be easier for us all. And it's really good to see that you're supporting our students in a very person-centered way. And yes, they will have the physical adjustments that they need, they will have the software that they need, they will have the support that they need, but also, you know, it's really good to see you highlighting curriculum design, because we've heard a lot about decolonizing of the curriculum, and, you know, we do want to hear about the disabled activists and the disabled inventors and the disabled writers, and have those included on our curriculum. That's really important. because inclusivity is all of our business. So we absolutely need your service to provide those support, but actually it's up to all of us and staff and students to do our part to make sure that the university is supporting all of our community in a holistic way. So thank you once again. Our final speaker will be Allyna Ullah, and I'll ask you to turn on your camera and speaker. Allyna is a year 3 chemical and process engineering student right here at LSBU. It's good to see you studying in this area. And she's an award-winning student, I should say, actually, because she is the current winner for sustainability. And we know sustainability is so important, not just in terms of engineering, but in terms of climate change and so many other issues. Now, she will be sharing a very personal journey with us. So just thank you in advance for being so open about your experience here at LSBU living with dyslexia. So over to you.
Thank you. Just sharing it.
Yes, it's coming up.
Oops. Hi, my name's Allyna. Yeah. Hi, my name's Allyna. I'm a 3rd year chemical and process engineering student. Last summer, I won the Sustainability 2020 challenge. My idea was creating a lining for boxes that protect them from any oil stains so they can be recycled. I'm currently working with AIM 93 at LSBU, trying to create a human-powered bike that will hopefully break this world record. In 2015, while I was doing my A-levels, I was diagnosed with dyslexia. Growing up, no one realized that I had dyslexia, even though there was quite big signs. I'm going to do a quick little poll on how much you know on dyslexia. So Dean, if you don't mind getting that up. Yeah, so if you guys could answer the questions and we can go through them afterwards. So the first question is, how many people in the UK have dyslexia? 1 in 4, 1 in 5, 1 in 10, or 1 in 15? The second question is it's a true or false question. More males have dyslexia than females. True or false? The third question is, dyslexia may be genetic. True or false? People with dyslexia tend to be low achievers. True or false? Dyslexia is a learning difficulty you are born with. True or false? And the final question is, dyslexia is curable. True or false? So I'll give you a minute to go through them. So the correct answer is 1 in 5. Is 1 in 5. It's 1 in 10 in the UK, 1 in 5 in the USA. The second question, it's actually false. There is no evidence that men or female have more, that there's a preference. Dyslexia is actually genetic. There is evidence that shows you can, it's in our DNA. Obviously it's false. The people with dyslexia aren't low achievers. Dyslexia isn't actually something you're born with. You can actually develop it. So fun fact, if you have a stroke, you can have a form of dyslexia, also known as Alexia, which is acquired dyslexia. And the final one is, dyslexia isn't curable, unfortunately. But yeah, there's a bit of fun facts. I'm just going to go through a bit more on dyslexia. So dyslexia is a common learning difficulty that can cause problems with reading, writing, and spelling. At least 1 in 10 people in the UK have dyslexia, 1 in 5 in the US. People with dyslexia tend to be high achievers in creativity and problem solving. And there are many different forms of dyslexia. The top 3 are phonological dyslexia, which is something I have, surface dyslexia, and double deficit dyslexia, as well as many others. I'm going to talk about the impact dyslexia has had on my life. Growing up, I would struggle reading, especially out loud. I would miss words and sentences. I would have difficulty spelling. I would spell phonetically. Pronunciation. Sometimes it takes me a few minutes to remember how to pronounce a word. my handwriting. I hold a pen differently compared to most people, and my handwriting tends to be a lot more messy compared to others. And I used to always struggle telling my lefts and rights. I still do. I have to do the little left and right thing with my hands to figure out which way it was. But yeah, it was all the small things that made me realize I had dyslexia. No one really picked up on it because I tend to get really good grades in general at school. I'm going to talk about when I found out I had dyslexia. I was doing my A-levels, or just a few months before my A-levels, I found out that I had dyslexia, and I was quite shocked with it. And I wasn't happy when I first found out, because growing up, all I knew about it was a learning difficulty that probably meant that you weren't going to do very well. And I felt very limited. I lost confidence in myself. I didn't think I was going to go very far in life or do as well. But when I spoke to my mentor, who was the one who did who diagnosed me, she goes that there's so many, modern figures out there that have done well and been successful. The guy who made Virgin has dyslexia. The owner of Dyson, the way he thought about his product was because he's dyslexic, and dyslexia helps you actually come up with creative ways and problem solving skills compared to someone without dyslexia. I decided to do my own research, and I found out there are so many other historical figures, dyslexia, Einstein, JFK, George Washington, Alexander Bell, Galileo, so many, which I never really knew because I wasn't really taught about it. I'm going to talk about a project that I did called Sustainability 2020 and talk about my struggles with dyslexia, or how it helped and benefited me.
Every day we throw away goods that can be recycled but become spoiled.
Think cardboard with mayonnaise on it, a carton of oil on it, cutlery ketchup on. That's why I, Allyna, created Unspoiled, a barrier used to prevent your cardboard boxes from being spoiled.
These products contaminate the bin, making recycling useless.
BBC report found that 84% of recycling waste has been spoiled due to contaminated recycling bins. Contamination occurs when you put the wrong thing in the recycling bin. To remove these products, councils need to sort and ship the waste, which costs each council £50,000 a month. Even a simple drop of sauce from one box can transfer to another box where it is now spoiled and contaminated. But we can fix this. I am working with LSBU on a simple yet much needed solution. A removable lining which is then lifted and thrown in the general waste bin. Think of it as a bib for your box. The food is placed on it, and when you finish, you rip it off and chuck it in the bin. It's that simple. Without damaging any other recycling. Every small action someone takes helps create a better world. So join me in putting a bib on your box. To recycle correctly, save money and save the planet. So this project I probably won it because I had dyslexia, I think. Because of the way I think and the way I came up with the idea, it made me want to solve problems, and it made me solve it in a different way. I remember seeing in the canteen all these boxes piled up in the recycling bin that couldn't be recycled, and the general waste bin overflowing with boxes that, meant that so many trees have been cut down for them. And I thought, if you put a lining on a box to protect it, you can reuse or recycle the box, and it could save trees and have a knock-on effect regarding, deforestation, carbon emission, and all sorts of things like that. So I decided to create this product, and I think it's because of the way I think. I think it's the way I applied myself. And when I first thought of the solution, I thought it was very simple, but I was told it was innovative and creative. And I do credit that to my dyslexia. Another project I work in is AIM 93. This is probably the biggest engineering project I've ever worked on, and the most challenging for me as someone with dyslexia. I had to work in a group of many students, and it was very difficult. I'm going to talk a bit about the project first. It was a super bike with unique engineering challenges. The frame was optimized for weight and stiffness. It was tailored for the rider's shape and strength. There was a sleek design to minimize aerodynamic drag, and hopefully in September, we'll be racing it in Nevada at the World Human Power Speed Challenge. When I first joined this project, it was my first year, been with them 3 years now. I was quite timid with it because I had to explain, I had to ask for everything to be repeated twice because sometimes it took me a bit longer to understand. I always had to have a laptop or an iPad with me to type up notes or record some of the sessions because I could never, write or type as fast enough. I might have had to have people explain things multiple times to me, and I was quite embarrassed at first because I felt like I was limited and that I wasn't clever or intelligent enough. But my actual teammates were actually quite nice, and they were all, willing to explain things to me, take their time out. And it was quite difficult because I didn't want to come out my bubble and put myself forward because I thought maybe I'd be ridiculed or people might might notice that I was a little bit different. But in the end, I actually, had a team that was happy to help me and understood, and I didn't ever have to explain myself to them, but were happy to, help me in any way they could. Yeah, so it was quite interesting journey, and I made me realize that people in life will accept you for who you are, regardless of, disability or race or anything like that. When it actually did come to the project, I think I was able to solve a bit of problems different compared to other people because of the way I thought and the way I solved problems. I think that came in handy when we were in Nevada and had issues with the bike. I'm going to talk about the things that need improvement in society. Growing up, I had no awareness. I didn't know what dyslexia was. I knew the basic, but I didn't really know how bad it was or the statistics or the facts about it. I just knew, the stigma around it, which also needs to be changed because I think there still is with dyslexia and learning difficulties and any disability where people think you're limited in life. I think that's important, and it's amazing that we have, presentations and events like this, which will, hopefully let people understand that what disabilities are and, that they're not limiting. Also having more things like more inclusive things, for example, more events with or chats with people with disabilities and how they can communicate and, even talk about their struggles, which I think, unfortunately, I don't know many people with dyslexia or anything sorts like that. So I don't really have anyone I can talk to about it. So if there was something out there which, allowed people to communicate and express their feelings, it would be quite useful. Using dyslexia friendly font, you get it in NHS letters, you get font, you get large fonts, you get English, Arabic, French letters, but you don't get anything that's dyslexic friendly. And the last 2 points are trying to integrate disabilities and normalizing them into our lives. So, for example, people use it as a marketing strategy saying, oh, we have ramps, so, come here, buy our product. It should be expected from all companies to have them. But there are things that are amazing that have, that show that disability has been, taken consideration, and people do try and integrate into our lives. For example, when I went to college, I had no support at all with DSA, with dyslexia. But when I went to uni, I had support from my lecturers, from my mentors. I had a study skills, all sorts of things that provided me with support. And I hope the government continue that and even, improve it in any way they can. Thank you for listening, and I hope you had a good time.
Thank you so much. We certainly did have a good time listening to that, Allyna. And I must apologise for pronouncing your name wrong because I know that's really important. Okay. I didn't chance to check that. But it was really good to for you to share how dyslexia affects you. And it's sad to see, that people still have those perceptions that people with dyslexia or any other learning disability will perform less well or not contribute as much. You've quite eloquently highlighted the great inventors who had dyslexia and other conditions. So it just goes to show that that we can all shine if we are supported in the right way. And it was really good to see the product that you are creating right here at LSBU. And I was especially pleased to see that it works with chips because I love chips. So if that can be finalised, that would be absolutely great, and hopefully I wouldn't need to feel as guilty about eating them. So thank you once again. So we're now going to go into our question and answer session. So I will invite all of our panelists, Jonathan, Jennifer and Kristen, to turn their cameras on. We have had a number of questions submitted in the chat, but I will go to Dean for the first question, which will be to Allyna, a bit more about your project. So Dean, if you'd like to come in with your question, please.
Thank you very much, Sanchia. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, what is the next step for your project for the Sustainability 2020 competition that you did?
So we're trying to get approval with the caterers to actually apply them, because they are the ones who have to actually apply, you know, put the lining in and all sorts of things. So we're talking between the caterings at the university and other caterers. I've been working with the student enterprise team who's been helping me with this, trying to create meetings and presentations and all sorts of things like that. So that's the next plan.
Yes, and if any of those people are on, please make it happen, because we need this project. Okay, so we have a number of questions. So I'll read out a question from David Matterton. He submitted a few, but I'll just ask one for now, and then if we've got time, I will ask others. And just to say, you can still put your questions in the Q&A box, so do still do that as we're going through. We'll be finishing the questions in about 20 minutes. So the first question that David had asked is, and I think this could go to probably Allyna or Kristen, if someone has a product idea and a cheap prototype, how do they move forwards? So would any of you like to come in, Allyna or Kristen? Would you like to come? Maybe Kristen, do you have?
Sure, I'll go. So coming in, I'm guessing it's a physical prototype. It's good that you're at the cheap prototype stage. So there's a couple of things to keep in mind. One, yes, it has to work, the user has to like it, but there's also IP issue, intellectual property. Yeah, so in England, you can't just put it on the web and say, do you guys like it? And then hope to patent it later. But what you can do is find 1, 2, or 3 end users, or maybe a group, have them sign an NDA that you find online. And that way you can go back and forth with them and have them test out your prototype. Most likely you'll end up having 10 prototypes before you're ready to go onto the next stage, okay? Now that next stage, you can either machine a prototype, you can contact, for example, just a regular engineer, or you can even link up with the LSBU engineering school. Maybe some students would do some work for you. And there you can either machine a prototype out of MDF, out of foam, or you can pay a bit more and get it 3D printed, which is what I'm doing right now. From there, you would go into manufacturing. And I saw your second question in there. Manufacturing, you would, again, have them sign an NDA and ask them how much it would cost to make your product.
Thank you, Kristen. It's really good points about the intellectual property and stuff like that, because that is really important. I don't know if you had anything else to add, Allyna.
Not really. I think I do is, you know, right now, theoretical, yeah. I think I do is all theoretical right now, unfortunately. But yeah, I think the way I did it is my idea, I entered a competition and then the university kind of protected my idea, as in because it's underneath the guidelines. But that's the way it came from me. So I think what Kristen said is probably the best advice when it comes to that.
Okay, fantastic. And there's been a comment from LSBU Digital in the chat for David or Claire, saying that there is possibly funding available, which is always good to see. Okay, so the next question is from LSBU Digital Grid, and they are wondering to what extent, and this is I think for DDS, they are wondering to what extent the London road building is inclusive by design.
Yeah, good question. The architects actually did, I was involved in a meeting about a couple of years ago at the planning stage, which was great. I mean, they'd already considered a lot in terms of their accessibility regulations, but also just wanted to have my opinion and the team's opinion on the plan so far. So I did, and we had that consultation meeting. The only things I remember adding that needed to be changed was in regards to dyslexia, for example. You know, everybody used to get lost in London Road because of the numbering system. It never made sense if you weren't dyslexic. But they were considering flow and directions and whether they should be using different, you know, levels. That was one consideration. But also the reception desk for somebody in a wheelchair, height of the reception desk, access to that. So there were lots. So I haven't seen the plan since, but I think the answer is yes, as far as I know.
Okay, that's good to hear. Maybe Jennifer, what about some of our other buildings? Are they inclusive too? Is this the one where we have more to do?
That's the correct answer, Sanchia. We have more to do. So I think just thinking about some of the routes that we have, so like the green route, that was a great idea. Obviously it was there before I started, just so that students can kind of go through all the different buildings and access it on one level. So that was amazing. And then I know, so before, it used to be that we had to give some permission to students by the way of ID to be able to access the disabled facilities and toilets. So that changed because obviously we have so many more students that are not registered with us with disabilities that access the university. And so why would they then need permission? And I think one of our networks, I think DNet, yeah, they were, they really kind of looked at I think a symbol or sign to put outside, so to say that not all disabilities look a certain way. So so there are little things that are going on, which is great. We need more lifts at Borough Road and lifts that work. So I just thought I'd put that in there.
Absolutely, and I've seen that campaign run in a number of places. You know, and that's the whole point of this seminar today. You know, not every disability is visible, and you know, there may be conditions that people have. My condition, for example, can sometimes cause frequent urination, and so I might need to use a disabled toilet for speed for certain reasons. So we can't, you know, we have to be careful again of the stereotypes and judgments that we are placing on people. So we have another question for you, Jennifer. So if you unmute, and this is from somebody anonymously asking, if there was one traditional rule that you would like to change, what would that be?
Oh, that's a big question. So I think more recently with some of the changes, particularly to the disabled students allowance, so student finance and some of the other funding bodies require very specific evidence. And during the current pandemic, we all know how difficult it may be to, I mean, I have to plan to be sick to get an appointment with my doctor. So how much more somebody who needed medical evidence, and for them to have to struggle to get that, and then for it to be turned away, it kind of delays everything for us, because we still kind of work towards the traditional way of doing things. So I'd like to change that. I'm not saying scrap medical evidence, but scrap the need for very specialist and specific medical evidence that has particular wording. Yeah, and I suppose another big thing is like a bit of the culture. I think Allyna touched on that, and certainly Kristen, and just the way that people view and think about you know, disabilities and people with disabilities, and yeah, so it will take some time, but that's what I would like to change.
And I know that question was asked for Jennifer, but if any of the panelists want to ask that question, if there's something you could change or something that you could introduce, what would that be? If any of the other panelists would like to come in.
Yeah, for me personally, I think it'll be just teaching kids what disabilities are, invisible disabilities, you know, physical, just trying to get that information across, because, for example, I didn't get diagnosed till I was 18, so that's quite a long time struggling. And if I knew the signs to look out for, I could have, you know, gone to a teacher much earlier. So just awareness of it.
Ways to awareness. No, it's aware. It starts with awareness, education, and then you can move on to action. So that's really important, Allyna.
I think pulling on what Allyna was saying, or pretty much pointing out what Allyna was saying, I didn't know what all the facts that she was saying about dyslexia, and you could almost turn a disability into something to be proud of. Like, instead of trying to hide it, promote it. Not the person with a disability, but people, ad campaigns, for example, so that people aren't ashamed when they realize they have that disability. They're not so ashamed to relate back to it.
Absolutely. Jonathan?
Yeah, just to echo that, really, we're all on a spectrum of ability.
Absolutely.
Spectrum. So it's about communication, language, change, and considering all of us are on a spectrum of that. And yeah, again, echoing what Jennifer said about medical evidence, it'd be great to remove that. And there's no need for that. Would be great.
Absolutely. We need to work to reduce those barriers and those bureaucracy and those red tape and just make it easier for us all. Okay, we've got a question from Claire. She's asking, there's been a lot of talk about physical products, but what sort of work are software companies doing to make their products more accessible? Or do the software companies need to do actually more than what they're doing now? It'd be good to hear this from the DDS, because I know a lot of our students will need specific software.
I'd say a little bit. Well, the great thing about things like Office 365 now, there's so many accessibility tools built in to our everyday functional tools. So, and they're being the hardware, which is great. So that's things like text-to-speech software, speech-to-text. It's in the operating system. Again, good for all, and that's good design. Traditionally, it has been assistive technology for students that are registered students who are eligible for the DSA that pays for these things. But we're finding now there's a lot of free open source software available that does pretty much the same thing as this specialist software did in the past. Yeah, Jennifer, did you want to add? Is there anything?
Absolutely.
Just to echo a little bit, so particular products, not that I'm advocating on or trying to sell any particular products or anything like that, but say for example, like Apple products, it is inclusive by design in some way. They have some of the features inbuilt, so a student using that platform for what may not necessarily need to be able to download the other software that we have, because it's part of the operating system. And there are a lot of companies out there, and I remember over the summer whilst we were at home, some of the companies were getting in contact with us at the DDS team to kind of go on seminars to look at the updates and the changes to their software packages, and kind of looking at it from the students' perspective, but also from members of staff who are encouraging students to use that. So there's a lot of developments, and I think they listen to feedback all the time.
There's also digital accessibility regulations now across the whole of Europe that we have to abide to. So whatever we use, even if the product's not suitable, if it's not accessible enough and we can't adapt it, we can't use it. So I'm sure companies will catch up.
Okay, do any of our other panelists want to chip in on that? I don't know if you've got any experience with software products. I'm
a DDS registered student, so I use quite a lot of these products, and they are quite helpful actually. And you know, even if you're not registered, I'd recommend you you have dyslexia and get registered, because they help so much with studying. I have like a program that I can take notes in, and I can do it with my presentation. It's really useful for pre-recorded videos right now, especially with the pandemic. It's actually, I think it's more useful now than it was before, I think, actually. So I would recommend, if you to go apply for it, and if you get it, it's a very useful tool.
Great. Okay, all right, I'll go on to the next question. This is for you, Allyna. You talked about dyslexic fonts. Where would you like to see those being used and available?
As a student, I probably want it in my PowerPoints and presentations, because I spend a lot of my times in lectures, and fortunately, my lecturers, they're happy to go back and forth during PowerPoint so I can read through them twice. But it would be quite useful if they could use, upload a dyslexic friendly font PowerPoint before that I could go along with, mainly there for me personally, or lecture notes as in printout notes and stuff like that.
Okay. Jonathan, do you have anything to add?
Oh, just remind me, I don't know if you noticed on our website, there's something at the top of that's built in, it's called Recite Me. And it's a bit of software that marketing have purchased. And it means that the user for the website can adapt the fonts. And there is a font there, I can't remember what it's called, that is supposedly more dyslexic friendly.
Didn't know about that.
So next time we look at the website, okay, it's in red, called Recite Me. And it's amazing, you can also create like a ruler that goes over all the text and you can just look through the window, the middle of the ruler, and scroll down and sort of having that huge, and adjust the contrast and the colours.
That's quite useful. I didn't know.
And we're trying to, yeah, it's a new thing in the last month. And then we're trying to get the Moodle site to use it as well. So that's what we're working on.
Fantastic. So DDS is always thinking ahead and innovating, which is good to see. There's a question about food development. I don't know if any of our panelists have any experience in this, but I'll ask it anyway. And if not, we can look at that outside of this. So somebody is asking anonymously what we think about food production and food production and how that could be more inclusive, and what we think about food development. So there's sort of lab grown meat or 3D printing meat. Would we see this as inclusive or exclusive? So I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that or any experience in that.
I saw the question. I'm a bit confused as to why it wouldn't be inclusive or how it relates to inclusivity. I think it's more sustainably geared. So yeah, I don't think it's classicist or exclusive. I think it's just another option out there. But maybe I'm wrong, please.
No, as I say, we may not know so much about this subject, but something that we can investigate more, I think, offline. LSBU Digital Grid is asking what support is given for staff and how do they register? Are staff able to use the DDS service?
They certainly can contact us, but we'll refer them to Human Resources. So there is Anna Yao, who's the Wellbeing Advisor there. I think so she might have a slightly different title. But yeah, they do. In fact, we've worked closely with that team, Equality and Diversity team, to help them make adjustments for staff. So they're sort of taking some of the models that we'll do for students and absolutely screening and adjustments for dyslexia and accessible adjustments as well.
No, absolutely. And just to say, obviously, as the head of Equality, Diversity and Inclusion, staff can contact our team at any point in time. We do have a reasonable adjustments policy that we will follow. We are members of the Business Disability Forum, so they're an external agency that give us advice, support and guidance. And we are members of the government's Disability Confidence Scheme, and we've recently successfully renewed. So we do have things in place for staff, so do approach us at any point in time and we'll be more than happy to help. Neve, who's one of the co-chairs of Disability Staff Network here, is asking if anyone here has had experience with the new closed captions feature on Microsoft PowerPoint. Has anyone had any experience on that? I didn't know it was available. Okay.
No, I haven't.
Okay. I mean, I'm not the brightest in this, but I know that Zoom, for example, has closed captions, whereas Microsoft Teams has live captions. And obviously, with closed captions, that takes a little bit more resource to action, doesn't it? So I've written to Zoom actually and asked them when they're going to introduce live captions, because it's really important that you know, all the platforms that is used for video conferencing is accessible. And I think we need to put pressure on these companies, Microsoft and Zoom and Google Meet, to make their platforms accessible and have live captioning like MS Teams does. Okay, somebody's put in the chat. Okay, it's a very recent development. Okay, live captions on PowerPoint. Hot off the press, you're the first to know. PowerPoint has live captions and is a step in the right direction. So it's excellent to see, again, that Microsoft is innovating and continuing to develop their products, because yes, we can introduce accessibility, but times are changing fast. And so that innovation needs to continue to develop. So it's good to see that Microsoft is bringing that in. So that's all of our questions. And we'll end the session here today. So thank you all so much for coming along today and hearing more from our students, our alumni, and our Disability and Dyslexia Service. Dean will post a link in the chat about our Women in Engineering promotional material. We have a Women in Engineering timeline. We have profile pieces which we release each month, highlighting the story of a female engineer. We've got playlists on YouTube, and we have events. So this is the last event for 2020, but 2021 is just around the corner, and we have lots more events coming up. So we do hope that you will join us for those events. So thank you to our panelists for sharing such wonderful insights with us. And thank you to all of you for attending. And I would just like to wish you a lovely evening and to stay safe and enjoy the little bit of freedom that you have now that we're in tier 2 for Londoners. So enjoy. Thank you.